You're listening to the Franchise Freedom Podcast with Giuseppe Grammatico.
Welcome to the Franchise Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Giuseppe Grammatico, your franchise guide, and thanks for joining us today. As you know, we've created this show from all the questions we have received over the years, corporate execs looking to make that transition into entrepreneurship, whether that's a franchise or not, but looking to give advice to existing business owners that are looking for coaching, 2023 planning. You're in the right spot. And we have an awesome guest today, a personal friend of mine. I've had him on the show, I don't know, how long has it been? Two or three times already. Henry Lopez from also another podcaster from the How of Business. Henry, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Glad to be with you again.
Looking forward to it. I appreciate you coming back on. There's only 4 or 5 guests that are repeat, so this is an honor. So we gotta put together an award. So I think the most we've had was 3, and this would be number 3.
Number 3, yeah.
Yeah, so,
I was joking with one of my repeat guests is we need to do like on SNL where they do the jacket, or at least some kind of a pin or something. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, the jacket. I think it's to get to the jacket. We'll say it's 5 episodes. So
okay,
we'll
that's
work
fair.
our way. Maybe we'll do just because we're on. Maybe we'll do a hat. That'll be so you can see it on the show.
It'll be more visible. Yeah,
I liked it. Well, the reason I asked you on the show is first off, you bring a ton of value, and we could talk about just about any topic. And we've been getting some really great questions from our viewers. And as I mentioned on our previous conversations, I believe on the past show, our philosophy has changed. Instead of me figuring out what I think is important, I ask the audience. I ask every single family I've worked with the methodology of they ask, you answer. What are your questions? What are your concerns? Let us answer it for you directly, open, and honestly. You may not like the answer. It may be a difficult decision to make, but we like to be very direct and honest, especially for those people that are looking to make that first transition to business ownership. So, had you on the show multiple times, and we're going to link all the previous episodes. I believe the last one was around customer service. The first one was around business coaching. Give the audience just a quick little bio background as to who you are. How did you get into your current business? And then I want to dive into 2023 planning.
Sure. Yeah, right quick. I've had the pleasure of doing the How of Business podcast now for 6 years. So just released 450th episode.
Wow.
Like we talked about, you've been on my show several times as well. And my background is I started my first business as a side hustle with a partner of mine back in 1991. It was a franchise business, actually. That was my first business experience. About 11 or 12 business ventures later, I've had some failures and fortunately a few more successes than failures. The podcast was about, in part, reaching out and sharing, just like you do with yours. And it's also been a great source of meeting people like you and I have met through the podcast. So it's been a great way to network with like-minded individuals. And I've met so many people that way. It also, of course, is a lead into my coaching business. I do one-on-one coaching with people who are either aspiring to start their first business or existing small business owners that are looking for ways to grow. Currently, I do the podcast, I do coaching and consulting, and I'm a minority partner in a franchise down here in South Florida.
Awesome. And you bring a lot to the table. Sometimes I'll hit up Henry for some advice as well. One business owner to the next. Sometimes you need, the value that I feel Henry brings to the table. Sometimes you need to talk to people outside your industry. And although yes, Henry does have franchising experience and his own franchise businesses, you need that different perspective. Like you're so into your industry and your market. It's like, let me get an outside perspective, and that's where Henry brings a ton of value, and I've referred people over to Henry because, as we talked about in one of the previous episodes, even though you're part of a franchise and you get that support, you still need some type of business coaching, accountability, and bringing those additional ideas to the table. So I think it's a win-win between the support from a franchise company and the coaching. I too I had worked with a business coach years ago when I had my first franchise as well. So awesome. I'll put everything in the show notes. Definitely want to check out the How of Business podcast. Let's start with, actually, let's start before getting into 20, if you're cool with this, 2023 planning. Let's talk about what you are seeing. You were working with, a lot of people right now. What are you seeing with your current clients today?
Yeah, and we'll start with some of the negatives, and then we'll finish with the positives. Yeah, certainly inflation is impacting just about every business that I work with in one way or another, and I think that the end result of that, and what we have to look at as business owners going into next year, is we got to be assertive about price increases. I think our customers understand that and expect that. I think that traditionally, as small business owners, a lot of people are very hesitant to raise their prices, especially in the service industry, right? Well, I can't raise my prices. I might lose customers. And yeah, you might lose some of those, but you've got to remain profitable. You've got to pass on some of those increases that you have in your cost structure. Now, I know for some franchises, you might have some restrictions there on what you can do on pricing, but in my experience, Giuseppe, and you can add some color there, most franchises allow for some flexibility, especially from market to market. So I think that we have to look at raising prices next year to account for, and maybe you've done that this year, I would hope as well, to account for inflation. So that's one thing that I'm seeing that's really impacting just about every business.
Yes, and it is. There's no hiding behind it. Depending on the franchise, a lot of times you had mentioned pricing on the franchise side. There's ranges given. You see more in the fast food where you need to be a little bit more strict as far as what you're charging to be consistent from one, just say McDonald's to the next. But as far as services, you're given pretty much a range. So
exactly,
you want to take advantage as much as possible in the economies of scale. But yes, even with the economies of scale, everything is going up. So you'll make adjustments. So will your competitors. So it's kind of an even increase because at the end of the day, you still got to make your margins. You still got the the bills you have to pay your employees. So
and people understand, right? Your customers are going to have to understand. The ones that don't, then you may have to let those people go. I had a gentleman on the show a few episodes ago to talk about this topic specifically about the impact of inflation and pricing. And his suggestion, and I've heard this from other people, curious as to your thoughts, is to maybe do it in 2 smaller increments as opposed to one big price increase. And I lean that way. What are your thoughts on how to raise prices?
Yeah, so they don't get sticker shock.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little less impactful, but you still, and then you do it again at another point in time. Some people say, no, pull off the Band-Aid, do it all at once. But I lean towards doing, if you're going to do it next year, 2 smaller increases. But you have to stay on top of it because you may have to do a 3rd increase depending on what happens to the pricing, especially if you're in a business where you've got raw materials that are increasing in price for you.
Yes, I saw on the restaurant side away from actual paper menus and have you scan a code. You're not constantly replacing or doing the whiteout over the the price and increasing it. So I've seen people do it in stages, kind of like you had mentioned. I've seen other places and other businesses keep everything the same and actually maybe just cut down on the portion of it. Or in the service side, I've seen it to where instead of bundling everything together, why don't we just say we'll itemize it so that you can kind of pick and choose as opposed to having to pay for 3 services in one, kind of everything in one. So I've seen a little bit, but I kind of like the idea of maybe doing it in increments because I get it. The consumer is hurting and, in many cases have to cut back. So if you can afford it, assuming you didn't wait too long, maybe doing it in increments would be a good idea. But I get it. People do understand. And I like the businesses that have been, upfront and just said, hey, we did have to increase 5% due to inflation, due to minimum wage increasing, et cetera, et cetera. And I think if you're open and honest, and I've seen a few people in the little town that I live in do that and post that kind of, right in the beginning, I think people appreciate that and understand.
I think so. So the other thing I'm seeing is kind of a lag effect. I don't know if that's the right word, but a kind of a delayed effect of COVID in this respect. Businesses that relied on getting out there, speaking, networking, whatever, to generate opportunities, that of course dried up during COVID.
Mhm.
And as we know, in those types of businesses, if we're not selling, we feel the impact of that sometime down the road.
Right.
And so I'm seeing a lot of businesses now realizing the impact of that. And now that you're able to get back out there, that's great, but that usually generates opportunities maybe 6 months down the road. So
Mhm.
it just, that is what I'm seeing a lot. The answer to that is we got to learn from that. There's nothing we could have done differently necessarily. Maybe we could have gone more online quicker, but I'm seeing a lot of that and people trying to recover from that
Hmm.
lack of sales activity due to COVID.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, things have changed, right? I mean, a lot of people just stopped kind of grew their business from a regional, like I'm here in New Jersey, and now they're covering the whole country, and they're
Yeah.
continuing virtually. But others, to your point, yes, it's definitely hurt business. So it's a new ball game. People are
It
working
is.
from home; they're not going to the office. It's going to be interesting what the next 5 to 10 years bring.
Yeah. Now, on the positive side, let's switch over. My wife's business, she's a travel consultant. She has
Mhm.
her own business and she has booked more travel this year than in quite some
Great
time. The
business,
last
yeah.
the last 2 years, all she was doing was canceling trips. So
Right.
she made no money. But there's pent up demand. There's pent up demand for people to go out and do things. So from a
Mhm.
business owner perspective, especially if we have businesses or we're considering a business that maybe deals in that space, tremendous opportunities there. We got to be cautious, right?
Right.
Because there's inflation, there's the fear of recession. But I think that is going to continue, the desire for people to get back out, whether it's travel
Right.
or interacting with people or getting back to in person conferences, that social connection. And if we have any kind of business related to that or depends on that, I think that's a huge opportunity. The remote workforce, I think we're going to find ourselves reverting back a little bit to a hybrid model. That's what I'm
Mm.
seeing more and more, and it makes a heck of a lot of sense. You're seeing that in corporate America, a return to some balance in between,
Right.
where you're not going in every day, but you're going in maybe a couple days a week or a couple times a month at a minimum. So, for my franchise that I'm in, which is in the shared office space, that we're seeing the benefits of that, of people working closer to home,
Right.
but still needing a place to go and conduct work that's in a professional environment. So those are some positives. And the other thing that I'm seeing a hint of an easing of that tremendous challenge of finding people to fill the
Mm.
positions that we have open. So it seems like people, and generally speaking, are returning to applying for jobs, being interested in positions. I'm seeing an easing of that. A year ago today, boy, it was impossible. And I'm talking about the whole range from
Right.
hourly workers to
Yeah.
professionals. I have a couple of clients who've been desperately trying to hire engineers, and it was a challenge. I'm seeing a little bit of an easing of that. What are you seeing as far as on the labor markets?
I'm hearing the same. Last year was a rough year, and it just seems like people are coming back. I don't know where everyone was, if they just kind of took off. I know some people left work. They on their they said it's not for me. Some people are now being asked to go to the office. I know some friends of mine, and they just refuse to go back. And they said, well, maybe this is time for a career change
That's
or
right.
for another employer to either hire me, or maybe I look at business ownership. Maybe I just need a break and need to kind of reassess everything. But yes, I am hearing things are definitely picking up, and I just think they're just going to improve from here on out. And we got some difficulty and things coming up here. So, but yeah, I think there's a lot of great employees looking for new homes and new careers. And this is I call it I think someone coined it the Great Reset, where it's like, all right, let me just go back and say, what do I really want? Do I want to work from an office? Do I want to work from home? Do I want a business? What does that look like? And it's that once in a lifetime reset, as I call it. Hopefully
Agreed.
once in a lifetime.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's so much of that I've seen, and we'll talk more about that because going into the new year, perfect opportunity to finally
Yeah.
launch and move forward with that idea. I want to just go back quickly on the labor issue. It ties back to pricing because what we have had to do as employers over the last year or two is pay a premium over what we were previously paying for those
Mhm.
positions. Well, that's adding to our cost structure. That's
Mhm.
another reason. That's another example of inflation in that regard that we have to be careful to make sure that our pricing is in alignment because what's going to happen internally, as is usually the case, those one or two or three key employees that we brought in at a higher price, the rest of the team is going to want some of that, right? So overall, what that's going to do likely is increase your labor costs. And that's another
Correct.
reason why you have to revisit pricing if possible in the new year.
Yeah, I had a conversation with someone and they said, the minimum wage is approaching $15. And it's like, okay, the minimum wage is 15, but the people currently making 15 are going to they're not going to expect to continue to make the 15.
That's right.
You're going to have to
That's
increase. So need to figure out exactly, okay, you need to have that all figured out going into the next couple of years. We're doing, I think, a dollar increase here in New Jersey up until, I think it was 2025, up until up to $15.
Yeah.
You need to factor that into your, okay,
Absolutely.
what is my service offering? What is it going to cost?
And by the way, I do not subscribe to the whole idea that, oh my God, that's going to ruin small business.
No,
We were ahead of that in Colorado. Colorado went up to 15 now in the same fashion. And they've been at 15 now for a couple of years. Had several businesses in Colorado, including one that paid minimum wage. In fact, actually two, the car wash business that we were in with 3 locations and a self-serve frozen yogurt shop. And we were still profitable even with those increases. One of the things we did is we passed that on in the way of price increases, right? And that's what we did. But the customers accepted that and understood that, and we were still able to be profitable even with minimum wage employees at $15 and above.
Right. Yep. That's it. You got to pivot. Yeah, you got to know your numbers.
You have to predict that. You have to anticipate that, right? So those are the things that kind of stood out. I think that as we talk about franchising continues to make so much sense for a lot of people, and you help people obviously through that decision process of a franchise and does it make sense for me? But boy, I'm hearing more and more people who are like you, specialize in helping transition from the corporate world into business.
Right.
Franchising makes so much sense because of you're not having to reinvent the wheel, right? You're buying in ideally to a proven concept and you're getting that support. So that just makes more and more sense. So that's why I'm seeing more and more people that are interested in franchises.
Yeah, they really the interest level comes around if people take a step back. And I always tell people the same thing, business ownership, it has to be the right fit. And obviously franchising, you got franchising and startups. Do you want the business built for you? Do you want to build it from scratch? Not a pro or a con. It's a preference, how you prefer. Right. But people where you get the aha moment, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but simply, it's not all fast food, and it's not all millions of dollars. There are franchises under 6 figures. You can run them on your own, home service businesses. It's going to be a little bit higher of an investment, but there are tons of options out there. And I think once people step back and say, I don't need millions of dollars. I don't need to work 7 days a week in some retail or fast food. And I'm able to run this from home part-time and keep my job until I transition out. Once they hear those facts and we explore it, their minds open up to say, wow, let's explore this. And again, not a right fit for everyone, but it's good to lay out the groundwork. These are the options out there. If any of these kind of sound good, we have another conversation. So, but yes, we've especially with the layoffs and with everything going on and people being asked to go to work, our phones are, ringing off the hook with just people not necessarily ready to make the move right away, but just let me learn more about this because I'm tired of, having to go into the office or, stuck with a manager that is preventing me from moving on and getting promoted with the business. So I get a lot of those frustrations. And I'm not saying business ownership is the answer to everything, but boy, I got some great stories personally and people we've helped over the years that have really kind of taken control of their time and financial, get that time and financial freedom.
Yeah. And that control is the big part of it. That's what it was for me. I was in the corporate world and making very good money. And so it's hard to leave that.
Yes,
I get it.
This.
It's a mindset shift. But once you wrap your head, begin to wrap your head around the fact that it is a perception that a job is more secure than a business. There's risk in both. There's no guarantees with any business. Even a franchise business doesn't guarantee it.
Right.
But I always felt like at least that was on me. It was my doing to a big extent. Yeah, I needed a little bit of luck and timing, and those things. We need those things to fall our way sometimes. But I got tired of somebody else dictating what my limits were. Where I had to be at what time, how much vacation time I had. All those little things added up to a point where it's like, and then as you said, what COVID has done is has helped all of us realize what's most important. What do I really want?
Yeah, and I encourage everyone, this is the perfect time. End of the year, things slow down a little bit, which leads us into our next topic, kind of preparing for 2023. And I think this is the time to I always take the last week of December off every year, spend it with my family, get caught up with not necessarily work, but just strategy, kind of what I anticipate. I look at the entire calendar. Let's talk about 23. How do we plan, whether it be financial planning going into the year? What are some good things we can be doing today to really get ready for next year?
Sure. For existing business owners, the biggest thing for me that I observe year after year is that a lot of people don't have their financials together. So this is an opportunity to don't wait till tax season to, finalize your financials. I tell you, we are managing our businesses blind if we don't know our financials. Now that is another advantage of franchise, because a lot of franchises offer systems that help us keep track of that.
Yes.
And so most franchisees are a lot farther ahead on this than an independent owner that doesn't have any experience, doesn't know how to maintain these systems. But even with franchisees, I've seen lots of people who don't know how to interpret the financials.
Correct. Yes. Good point.
And listen, we cannot use the excuse of, I'm not a numbers person. I leave the finances to my accountant. I'm not saying that you're going to become the bookkeeper, but we must make sure that at year end here that we work on getting our financials cleaned up and finalized, so that at the latest, sometime mid-January, you're looking at your 2022 financial results, because I don't know how else you make accurate plans for 2023 without knowing what you actually realize in 2022. Right. And it's more than just what money's left in the bank.
Right.
That's very rudimentary. That's not enough. We want to know what our margins were and other key ratios depending on your business. Now, it doesn't all come from the financials. Right. A lot of them might come from your point of sale, your membership system, whatever those key metrics are that you're going to judge. How did you do in 2022? And what is a realistic plan for growth in 2023? It starts by making sure you've got those clean numbers. And so that's something you got to focus on. And then obviously, as I just said, 2023 planning. Some of us do it late December like you do. I think that you got to do it in two phases. In late December, it's a lot of the thinking, Giuseppe, right? What are my higher level goals? Where do I maybe want to pivot or shift the business or direction? Who do I want to focus on? What are those price increases that I'm thinking I'm going to do? And then once you've finalized your financials, and that may not be until sometime in January, then I kind of fine tune that plan and plug in the key financial metrics that I'm setting for 2023. So that for existing business owners, that's my biggest recommendation.
I love it. Yeah, I think it's you're right. There's no excuse for not knowing it. I learned a lot from my accountant and from other business owners. And reviewing your profit loss and balance sheet. I still know people today that rely on what's left in the bank account as their salary. And it's like, well, you have to look at your profitability. If you're making $100,000 in profit at the end of the year, but there's no cash left in the account, now we have to figure out, is it, where are the holes, or is the account receivable just out there? Do you have clients that are paying you 60 days out, 90 days out, or you're having to pay everything else out of pocket, your employees, your suppliers, and everything prior to that? So it's not only profitability, it's cash flow.
Absolutely. Cash flow is key. Cash flow is key. I just did a couple of episodes on cash flow because, again, most people don't know how to forecast cash.
Right.
And it's okay. It's okay if you don't. But your responsibility as a business owner is to learn. And this is not complicated math, okay? This is simple math. I am terrible at math. I mean, terrible. My wife laughs at me every time we go to add up the bill at dinner.
Right.
I can't calculate a simple tip, okay? So it's not about being a math whiz. It's about understanding basic financials, and the spreadsheet does the math for you, or QuickBooks does the math for you. But you're absolutely right. It's one of the biggest areas. If you have any kind of receivables, you need to stay on top of it. And this right now, and the year is the time to revisit that and see how you're performing there. And if you're having cash flow challenges, meaning that at certain points of the month, you don't know where the money is going to come from, then we got to do a better job of forecasting that. Maybe we got to line up a line of credit. Somehow we got to mitigate that and make sure we don't run out of cash, which is at the end of the day what kills most businesses, right?
Correct.
Now, for new businesses, if you're in the stage where you're thinking about starting a business, what I will share with you is I'm the type of person who's overly analytical. So I can think about it and run the numbers and crunch it again and create another spreadsheet and over and over and over, and I can get paralyzed in that. You do have to do the analysis. Anybody that works with Giuseppe, you're gonna go through a process of evaluating a franchise. But once you've done all of that, it does take a little bit of a leap of faith, right? Because there are no guarantees.
Correct.
Giuseppe can't guarantee that the business is going to be a success, even a franchise, even the best of franchises, right? There's still a risk involved. But to your point, there's a lot of ways that we can mitigate that risk, including not all opportunities have to be a $2 million investment, right? There are plenty of opportunities out there that can be a side hustle if that's what's most comfortable for you. Or maybe you can't let go of the benefits that you're getting, the health insurance benefits you're getting from your job just yet. And that might be one of the reasons you have to start on the side. But the thing is, it's a mindset issue, Giuseppe, is what I find. After all the work is done, after you guide people through finding the right fit for them, then I have to have the mindset to say, I'm going to move forward even in the face of risk. Yeah.
Yeah, you do your due diligence. So people that don't do their due diligence, they get overwhelmed because they don't know the answers. And to your point, everything is going to be a risk, right? So we can't predict the economy, but we can, run our business a little bit different. So maybe focusing on certain industries, taking advantage of technology where that is, and maybe it's doing a Zoom call versus traveling to a client that month, and just ways of being a little bit more efficient. But absolutely, you do the due diligence, you talk to franchise owners, which is the benefit when analyzing a
huge benefit,
a franchise, because you can ask them, I gather the info, stage 1, stage 2, let's talk about it realistically. Were these numbers in line? What's some, can you provide some insight on maximizing my returns? Should I hire the additional salesperson? Should I hold off? Should I run it from home? Should I have the office? And they'll kind of talk you through it. And to your point, analysis paralysis, right? I mean, you start looking at to the point where it's like, there's always going to be that leap of faith. And someone actually asked me this today. Well, what about competition? And I said, really, that's really not it's something you should analyze, but it shouldn't be necessarily the main concern, because any business, I have yet to come with a business.
Well, if it's a good business model, you're going to have competition. That's, you should see that as an indicator that you're onto something. Now there is such a thing as saturation of a market in some industries. Correct. But by and large, man, I mean, you look at the car wash industry as a perfect example. I've been talking for years, oh my gosh, there's too many car washes. But what has happened in that particular segment is the pie has actually grown, because what's called the exterior express model, where you probably have experienced it, where you stay in the car and then you vacuum for free if you want to. That model has actually expanded the market. And so there's room for more competition. So that's an example of where sometimes competition can be absorbed, right? But I agree with you, Giuseppe. We have to be realistic about, do I open the same kind of business a block away from the same business? Okay, well, you got to think about that.
Correct.
But that's another advantage of a franchise, right? A franchise, if it requires a physical location, is going to help you with vetting that location. They're going to look at those kinds of things or help you look at those kinds of things.
Right, but they at the end of the day, they have to approve the location and the territory, and there's lots of studies in there. There's different ways to figure out depending on the business model itself. So I think to your point, it's all about mindset. You're going to go into this thing saying, first off, you're not going into this thing blind. You know that you're going to be supported from the franchise company, potentially working with other franchisees in your area because they may be in the market next to you, but you go in with the mindset you're going to make this thing work no matter what. And how are you going to differentiate yourself? And sometimes, like a car wash, how are you different? Maybe it's the customer service aspect, hiring great people. Owner may or may not be involved. It's the follow-up, making sure they're satisfied. It's the emailing on the birthday and giving a free car. I get that. And there's one car wash, the only car wash I go to, they send me a birthday, happy birthday free car wash. And I go there we bring all our cars there. So it's things like that to really, differentiate yourself. But yes, there's going to be 100% competition, which to your point means that there's demand, but you also want to make sure there's not so much saturation that, it's like, oh, wait a second, how many painting franchises are there? It's like a 1-to-1 ratio per household. That's going to be a little bit too much. So
that's too much. Exactly. So you got to look at that.
We hope you're enjoying the show. This episode of Franchise Freedom is brought to you by the SMB Podcast Network.com. The network is a collection of podcasts and shows from around the internet, which focus on bringing you interviews with amazing guests who share actionable advice, ideas, and information for small and medium-sized business owners and entrepreneurs. Visit www.smbpodcastnetwork.com to find more great shows and easily subscribe to be notified of new episodes. It's a great way to discover quality content. If you discovered us today via the network, then I hope you're enjoying the show and will consider subscribing directly so you never miss any of our great episodes. Now back to the show. All right, we got that in. What a great network. It's a one-stop shop for any business owners. We cover topics like finances. We have profit first, banking, finances, marketing, you name it. So definitely check out the SMBpodcastnetwork.com. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I cut you off on that last thought, but I want to continue the conversation. So let's continue where we left off.
Yeah. So mindset. One of the questions I always ask people as they're getting ready to launch, getting ready to make that final decision is, what is the worst case scenario? So I want you to think about what happens if this franchise business that you start fails. What is the impact on you and your family? And so if the answer is it would be disastrous, it would ruin us financially, the kids don't get to go to college, we got to sell the house. Well, then maybe we need to rethink the risk that you are taking, the real financial risk that you're taking. Usually what I find, however, is that, and the way that you guide people, is that you're going to take a much more measured risk. Certainly if it fails, it's painful. Nobody wants to fail. And it's not what I want financially, but it's not going to ruin me is hopefully the answer. I'll go back and get a job, or I'll keep the job I have. So usually when people think through that worst case scenario, it's not the end of the world, really. And really what I find is then that it uncovers is the big thing is the embarrassment of failure, not the financial impact, although that, might sting, but the embarrassment of failure is what I find holds people back most often than not.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think someone wrote people would, if they had two options, would prefer to avoid failure than achieve pleasure. Something like the ideal situation, and people are much more risk adverse. But to your point, once you map it up, it's like, well, what's the worst case scenario here?
Yep.
Are you going to first off, are you truly going to just let your business fall apart? Are you going to step in? What can you actually do? Can you sell your business? Your business is still worth something. You don't just walk away. You're building equity into something that is your true, where people have made their fortunes. In many cases, it's the exit of that business, because now you're looking at a multiple of your earnings all paid up front. So yes, I think once you get it out of your head and figure out, and sometimes to your point, it's this big, crazy thing. And, I always tell people, if you have 100,000 in the bank You don't want to invest a whole 100,000 into your business. You need to have that cushion.
That's right.
Who's paying your personal expenses, your mortgage, if you're leaving your job to run this full time, but also what if the business takes 6 months to take off and you need a buffer period and you got to pay employees and marketing and insurance. So factor that in. You want to use leverage. And if you can get a loan, obviously it's whatever you're most comfortable with, but you also don't want to put yourself in the situation where you're stressing day one. I got to close business immediately to pay my royalty or to pay my rent or my mortgage. You're going to make some really poor decisions. So I always say, map it out. And maybe that map is, I decide to move forward with the franchise, but not open up until the spring or summer, giving myself a little bit more of a buffer, easing my way in. You got options, and you can always ask. You're not guaranteed to get what you want, but you can always ask the franchisor, hey, this is my situation. Can you work with me? Yes or no. And sometimes they do. Sometimes they meet you in between. So
a lot of them will, because they're interested in everybody being successful, right? Because it's correct for everybody else. Yeah.
Right. And if you're a truly good fit and you meet, the requirements, then they'll work with you. So
one last point on the whole risk thing. I think that also people who have not done a business yet assume that business owners or entrepreneurs are all big risk takers. I can assure you that I do not consider myself, nor am I a big risk taker person. In fact, as I just shared, I tend to overanalyze things. So what we do as business owners, once we've made that initial leap, is we plan, we calculate, we make projections. And we're willing to take on that risk at the end, but it doesn't mean that we're reckless about risk.
Right.
I think that's another big misconception that maybe gets fed to us as to why we should keep our safe jobs. And listen, you may very well enjoy your career. And for me, I had a very lucrative and very rewarding career in sales, but it was about wanting to do my own thing, wanting to work towards building my own wealth instead of helping somebody else build wealth. And it was that control factor that we talked about at the beginning of this conversation. Those were the things that led me to say, I need to go do something on my own. So that risk is something that you mitigate by doing the proper planning, by going through the process that you guide people through, by going through the process that a franchise is going to require of you to go through, because they're looking for people that are the right fit, right?
Yeah.
They're not out there trying to sell franchises to people who don't want them. They want successful franchisees. And so that's another reason why, while a franchise does not guarantee success, there is a lot more that's mitigated that I think provides a greater opportunity for success.
100%. I have nothing to add to it. You nailed it. I mean, that's truly what it is. But I tell people you got to do the due diligence, and that's where I stress franchisor and talk to as many franchisees as you can, and you're going to get the good, the bad, the ugly, everything in between. But always ask. I always say, go deep with the why question.
Absolutely.
Why didn't you do well? Well, I had a lot of personal stuff. I spoke with someone that went through a divorce. Okay, well, that's a personal thing. Aside from that, was it the support? In some cases, I've heard, maybe, I tell everyone, not every franchise is built the same, and maybe the support wasn't what they expected. Not that it was bad, but they expected a little bit more, or they assumed. So, or some people are running it full time and not, they were going to run it full time, but they got sucked back into their jobs and had to run it part time. So dig deep in the due diligence. I always say you want negative, you want positive, and everything in between. And from there, you formulate your best option. At the end of the day, right? No one wants a business, in my opinion. They are looking for a vehicle. They need the business to create. So they want time and financial freedom. That's exactly what I wanted. What is time freedom? You work when you want, the hours, if you want to take vacation. Financial, you want sky's the limit from what the business can make you and generate to the sale of the business, which is where, again, wealth, fortunes have been made from the sale of businesses. So what are the vehicles? And I had someone on the show a while back. He actually took a car out and he's like, you got real estate, you got the stock market, you got crypto. I don't really understand how crypto works. I don't touch it because I don't invest in anything I don't understand. And we've heard some craziness over there. You got startups, you got franchises. There's so many vehicles, and you don't just pick one vehicle. It may be maybe you diversifying. I have money in the stock market. I only own a home. I don't invest in real estate, but I had some franchises. I have my consulting business. The list goes on. So you can own different things, and that's also a way to diversify. If one business or vehicle takes a hit, maybe there's a real estate bubble, or you're losing tenant, whatever the case may be, you have another business to kind of offset that. And things in life, and you'll see this over and over again, it's cyclical. You'll have ups and downs, and it's really kind of smoothing out that ride.
Agreed. Well said.
What else? A lot going on. I actually have a show later today. We're gonna work with Laura Posey, talking about setting the one page. It's a one page daily success checklist and business plan, which I found interesting. So we're going to be
love that,
talking about that. So there'll be more to come on planning and simplifying the process. And to your point, it's not something you do in December. I spent a lot of time in December, but it's really just like, you're reviewing your financials, things come up, and you may just say, you know what, going into next year, and you may realize this early in the year, I'm going to do away with paid ads, and I'm going to double down on affiliates and working with those people and spending a lot of time and doing it right. What else didn't we talk about?
Yeah, well, as it relates to planning, I'm curious because I've been giving this a lot of thought. I work with my clients on planning. And a question I would have for her that you may want to ask her or explore is, why is it that we are so bad, generally speaking, so bad at planning? Why is that? It seems like most business owners I work with, it's just not something they're very good at. And I'm not saying I'm great at it. I think it's just I've been developing that muscle for some time. But one of the things that I like about that I'm sure you will explore, is one of the things I think we've had a challenge with planning is we have traditionally looked at planning as that annual plan that we put together. And the reality is that then by month 4, that plan is, out the door, and things have changed, and our environment has changed, and we've had to pivot. And I think that's one of the reasons why people don't give a lot of attention to planning. I think it's also, we tend to be more the type, especially when you get into business, of let's just do, forget about planning. But why do you think it's such a challenge for so many business owners to take the time to plan and then to execute to that plan?
I think I have an answer to that. And actually, it's funny you mentioned that, because there's a section here called success habits, and I don't want to post it on here because I'm having her on the show.
Exactly. You're going to talk about that. Yeah.
And plus I want her okay. I had to sign up for this. So I think it has to come down. It comes down to habits. I think too many people are creating these goals, but we have no idea how to achieve these goals. I want to lose 20 pounds this year. Okay. How am I I'm going to work out? Well, I think that's too vague. And it was a gentleman, Alex Hormozy. I found this I guess he owns some gyms. I've seen them on Instagram and Facebook, and he had a talk on, throw your goals out. And obviously he's extreme to grab your attention. And he said, it's all about habit and habit tracking, because losing 20 pounds, that's great. But overall, you want to get your health in order, not to lose 20 pounds. You want to get healthier. So you start off with one habit, and you do a habit a week until it becomes ingrained in you. So that means it means walking, depending on your level, it may be 5,000 steps a day for the first week, turning into 7,000, then finally 10. Once you get to the kind of the max, or where you want to be at, you check that off, and that's ingrained in you. Every morning you walk 10,000 steps, followed by the next is intermittent fasting. You skip breakfast. I'm just making this stuff up. So
sure.
By creating these daily habits, and you only move on to the next habit once it becomes a true habit, just like brushing your teeth, just like, combing your hair. So that's the way he described it, is that once you get the habits and you track them, these are little wins, and, creates that feel good chemical in you. And it's like, all right, I accomplished something. I'm making progress. Then it becomes, if I just do these habits, which I'm doing anyway, I brush my teeth anyway, my teeth shouldn't fall out of my mouth. I shouldn't have cavities. So if I'm doing these habits, then it's like, it's not a goal. It just naturally, you're going to lose weight. Naturally, you're going to feel better. And I noticed here, and we haven't spoken yet, but I noticed the success habits, and it was in line with the podcast I just watched.
Yeah. And I can see where I can apply that too, as we were talking about the financials. If I just start a step at a time,
correct.
It's not that I'm expecting you to understand completely your P&L and your balance sheet in 1 week, But if you start digging into it, if you start using it, you start asking questions. That's what I did. Started asking questions of my CPA, sometimes the same question 5 times. Then little by little, you develop that muscle and that habit of looking at those numbers. So yeah, excellent. I'm looking forward to that episode you're doing with her. Who was the guest again? Who you're going to talk about?
Lauren Posey, and we're talking Laura Posey. Excuse me,
Laura Posey. So we'll look forward to listening to that episode.
In the next half hour here. And the other kind of takeaway on tracking, there's a lot of Excel spreadsheets and things you can buy. And one thing I've done personally, and it has worked, and I just started implementing this, so more to come, is utilize the free technology using every day, like Google Calendar and Time Block. The first 60 minutes of the day, no one could book a call with me from 8 to 9 a.m. because I am, taking a walk with my wife and catching up on the news and just, getting a stretch in there, whatever it is, taking care of myself. So that's my hour of kind of me time. And if you time block it and you use a calendar service, it helps so much. So I encourage everyone to use, you don't need fancy tech, just that calendar itself, and follow it. Look at it every day.
Yeah, that should be a topic for our next time we chat, is our time blocking techniques, because that really is powerful. So I look forward to maybe chatting about that on the next conversation.
Yeah, I gather I'm learning about all this stuff now. It's implementation mode and being, definitely need to make some progress there. But this has been awesome. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I'm sure we could have gone for several hours here, as we always enjoy chatting and getting caught up. And we're going to put all your information. So tell the audience really quick, best way to get in touch with you, who you serve, and best way to reach you.
Sure. Thehowofbusiness.com is where you can find everything about me, including the podcast. And I focus on helping just people like us, especially, if you're in the corporate world. I help people with coaching them to either get started. And that's why Giuseppe is one of my partners. If you're considering franchises, he's my recommendation for franchise consultants. And then I also work with existing small business owners that are looking to grow their business or perhaps get ready to exit their business. So thehowofbusiness.com is where you can go to find all of that.
Yep. And Henry is definitely my go-to. So for business coaching, people that need assistance, over and beyond, some brief conversation we have, Henry is my go-to. It's the area he specializes in. And that's a big part of what we talk about. It's the who, not the how. How do I fix my business? Better question to ask yourself while you're doing your 2023 planning is throw that question aside and figure out who can help me, because the who, and yes, there's going to be time commitment and a cost involved, is going to be able to exponentially grow your business and fix those problems much quicker, given you're talking to someone that's gone through the same situation that can really help you. So someone like Henry, highly recommend. If you're struggling with your business, need some direction, looking to pivot, I'd highly recommend reaching out. And I will say you probably end up fixing that problem much faster, especially with the connections, the who's, again, that Henry has in his business. So Henry, thanks again for coming on the show. It's been fun. All the info will be in the show notes, and please, share this episode, even if it's with one person that could benefit from what was said today. If you like an introduction to Henry, or not sure to reach out to Henry or myself, let us know. Send us an email, send us a message. I answer every single one of them. And if you have a specific question, again, send it. It may be our next topic for next episode. So till we meet again, Henry, thanks again for coming on. And everyone listening in, thanks again. And we'll talk soon. All right, bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in. Whenever you're ready, here are 3 ways Giuseppe can help. 1. If you've ever considered owning a business of any kind, you owe it to yourself to get a copy of Giuseppe's book, Franchise Freedom. Download your free copy at ggthefranchiseguide.com/book. 2. Want to understand how successful executives make the transition from corporate to owning their own franchise? Join Giuseppe's next online presentation, Franchise Freedom: How to Escape the Corporate World and Have Financial and Time Freedom by Owning a Franchise, by going to ggthefranchiseguide.com/video. 3. Want to work with Giuseppe one-on-one to identify the right franchise opportunity for you, to navigate the process, and get plugged into experienced franchising advisors? Send him an email to gg@ggthefranchiseguide.com with one-on-one in the subject, and he'll send you all the details.